Hey ho, dear ones. In last week's episode, we talked about how the next era of coaching will be led by practitioners who activate what I call spiritual intelligence. Spiritual intelligence is your ability to access divine guidance and wisdom from your higher self and the spiritual realm and apply it in real situations. But here is the interesting paradox that's happening right now. Many coaches and healers and creatives already understand powerful spiritual systems. They know human design, they study astrology, they are familiar with gene keys, they work with energy, and yet their business still feels inconsistent. Income fluctuates, clients come and go, and they often find themselves wondering, what am I missing? And the issue usually isn't a lack of knowledge, it's that their spiritual intelligence isn't fully activated and being used in the right way in their business. Because here's another thing that's happening right now that is very real, the business advice overload. We are getting bombarded with information on what it takes to run a successful business in 2026. There has never been more information about how to build a business. Funnels, messaging frameworks, content strategies. Oh my gosh, algorithm tactics. That's huge right now. Every week, there's another method promising better results. And my clients, the coaches and healers that I work with, are trying to absorb all of it, but it's leaving them feeling very overwhelmed and scattered. So instead of building momentum, they feel like they're constantly starting over, trying to learn the new thing that's actually going to get them on the pathway to consistent client attraction. But the deeper issue isn't about learning more strategy, learning the latest algorithm tricks. It's guidance, it's divine guidance, it's the internal guidance. And without that guidance, it becomes impossible to know which advice actually applies to you. So people end up following strategies that worked for someone else, but it won't be aligned in the right strategy for them, for their gifts, their energy, or the kind of transformation they're meant to create. This is where spiritual intelligence becomes essential. And it's not just about serving clients. It's not just about finding energetic alignment, although that's the first step. It's about being guided to the actual business strategies, marketing tactics, ways to connect to your audience that are an aligned fit for you. If you look at my human design chart, for example, I have so much speaking, storytelling, sharing of my experience, sharing my lived experience. So when you look at that, podcasting is a wonderful medium for my energy. But there's a lot of podcasters out there. The podcasting market has changed a whole hell of a lot. It's much more challenging to get the downloads, get the guests, pitch yourself to be a guest on other people's podcasts. People's attention span is getting more towards short-term content, and podcasting is more of a long form. So I am being called by higher self to stay on top of all that. I don't spend loads and loads of time reading what works in podcasting today, but I do pay a little bit of attention to it because my higher self calls me to understand the way to podcast in 2026 that really reaches people. So, yes, first and foremost, I'm using my spiritual intelligence to offer you the content that I feel like you need on a soul level that is also enabling me to be in my highest energetic alignment and potential. And I'm also using my spiritual intelligence to understand the latest podcast strategies that actually leads to greater downloads, greater reach. And guess what? My podcast download rate has really upticked this year. And for the first time, I'm being ranked. And listen, okay, rankings. The coach I'm working with right now has an extremely popular podcast. It's The Lively Show, and we'll link in the show notes if you want to check it out. Her name is Bella Lively. She's been podcasting for years. It's one of the reasons I hired her because I wanted her also as a podcast mentor because her podcast is the primary engine of her business. And she even, and I said that to her. I said, I'm wanting to hire you primarily because it seems to me that your podcast is the primary engine of your business. Um, and that's how my business is set up. So, first of all, is that true? And second of all, will you mentor me? And she said yes and yes. Yes, that's 100% true. Yes, I will mentor you. And so hiring her as a mentor is just another way that I'm learning how to be a smarter podcaster at all levels, all the things you need to know. Because podcasting isn't just about creating great content, that is first and foremost. Creating really great content that has you in alignment to all the things your gifts, your audience, what's relevant, but it's also understanding how you can grow and spread your message and market it and share it lots of times. Because the one things I've learned about podcast episode promotion is it never ever is one and done. You got to think of a million different ways to share your podcast episodes over and over and over. And that's the way it gets traction. But I don't do that ever from a way that feels like tedious work, or I should say, extremely infrequently, maybe once in a while. But typically, I do it in a way that always feels aligned because I use my spiritual intelligence. And I can tell you that this year, 2026, is the first year that I'm now on the top 100 and top 200 charts in North America for the spiritual category of podcasts. I'm consistently on the top 10, 50, 100 in countries across Europe, small countries and large countries across Europe. But the North American, specifically the United States, is a very sophisticated podcasting market, and it's very hard to arrive in the top 100 or top 200. And I've more than once arrived in both Canada and the United States in the top 100 and 200 in the spiritual category of podcasts for that particular weekly ranking. And Bella would tell me, don't worry about rankings, Allison. Focus on content and serving. And she's right. However, Bella is very right arrowed. I've never looked at her human design chart. I know she's a manifesting generator, but I very much guess that she has a lot of right arrows. That's all about flow and experience and feelings. I have 3 left arrows. That's about strategy, systems, routines. And for my left arrowed energy, I actually get satisfaction looking at rankings. I'm also a projector. My signature is success. So, me feeling success actually fuels me. It fuels my content well, it fuels my energy to keep going and keep showing up. It brings me joy to see these rankings. It's like, hey, my message is hitting. This guest was a success. It's feedback that I actually find helpful. Now, if I get hung up on ratings and I beat myself up for not being highly ranked, then I'm indeed dipping in shadow and I'm indeed going out of alignment. And that's definitely something that Bella was, you know, coaching me through how to shift out of that when I notice I'm in it. But you can see both Bella and I are podcasters, and our podcast is a hugely important part of our business. She doesn't look at rankings at all, and that makes her feel better and serves her, and it actually enables her to have a super highly ranked podcast. For me, checking on my ranks from time to time actually does help me. It fuels me and it actually keeps me in energetic alignment because we have different energies. We're both following our spiritual intelligence and it's taking us into different directions. And that's what spiritual intelligence allows you to do. It allows you to sense what actually matters for you. And rankings, a little bit, not a lot of it, but I would say a little bit, they do matter to me because I don't have a boss patting me on the back and telling me, good job, Allison, way to go, keep it up. But seeing Soul Alive Radio on a top 10 or a top 100 ranking, it just is like, huh, yeah, pat on the back. This podcast is the message is getting out. And that's ultimately why I show up for this podcast so consistently because I feel so deeply that these messages are important. They're important for you. And I just want to share them. And so that brings me to my third point, which is activated spiritual gifts really change how you make business decisions. And when you're activated, your intuition becomes a reliable guide, not something you second guess. And sometimes our higher self really invites us to really take a big leap into the unknown. In the energy upgrade process, which is what we go through when we're experiencing accelerated energetic growth, I've talked about this before on the podcast. There are 5 stages of it. First is the invitation, then the isolation, then the calibration, then the initiation. And lastly is the higher levels of communication with the divine. But in this 4th stage, the initiation, a typical characteristic of an initiation is your higher self nudging you to jump into what feels like the unknown. There's no net. You don't know where you're going to land. And it can be very difficult to surrender to that because we do want safety and security and to know and to see where we're landing before we jump. But when you have activated spiritual intelligence, you can follow those nudges. You can jump when your higher self says jump because you know you're going to land. You might fall on the landing and skin up your knee, but you're going to eventually know that that served a divine purpose because there were lessons for you to learn and wounds for you to heal. Because with activated spiritual intelligence that comes from your gifts, you begin to sense the few things that will truly move your business forward. And none of us are meant to be chasing down every business strategy. The real businesses, if you look around at businesses that are successful and making money, they all have a focus on a few things, a few ways to market, a few sales strategy that leads them to the most success. Now, as companies get bigger and bigger and bigger and they have big marketing teams and sales teams, then yeah, they might have more. But if you look at solopreneurs or looking at business owners with smaller teams, you will notice they're not on 10 different social platforms. They're often on one or two or three. I'm really only on Facebook and Instagram. I haven't gone to Substack. I'm on YouTube passively because I know a lot of listeners of Soul Alive Radio are actually watchers and they like to watch video instead of just listen. And I do eventually want to expand my YouTube channel out to be more than it is now, but I'm only on really 2 platforms, and I just started to get serious on Instagram because I didn't want to spread myself too thin. There's one, uh, influencer, I don't think she'd call herself an influencer, she's a messaging expert. Her name is Julie Solomon, and I've enrolled in some of her courses over the years because I think she does a really good job teaching on how to message in your business. And the only platform she's on is Instagram. And I know she's running an 8-figure business right now. She has 150,000 followers on Instagram, which is a lot, but for an 8-figure business, that's not a whole ton. I know people with 250,000 followers on Instagram, and they're really struggling to make any money per month. But she has these followers and she has such a connection to them. And she's really decided that Instagram is going to be her main engine of her business. And she's going to go all in on Instagram because her spiritual intelligence has called her to that. So she's cultivated a very close relationship with her audience. And she also has her mailing list. I'm such a big believer in having a mailing list and using your mailing list because those emails that you got permission to send emails to are yours. And yes, we've got to deal with the annoying spam folder, but social media platforms could, leave tomorrow. I mean, we saw TikTok in the United States. It was going to go away for a while. So if you had only a TikTok strategy, your whole business could have just blown up, right? TikTok did end up coming back, but you just never know with social media platforms. Those followers aren't yours. They belong to the social media platform, and the algorithms change all the time. But with a mailing list, those email addresses are yours. So if things shift, you can take those email addresses with you. So Julie has an amazing business, and she's really has a mailing list and she has Instagram, and that's it. And a podcast. She also has a podcast. I would say those are probably her 3 main things. And that's something I advise business owners to have. 3 main things. So my 3 main things are definitely podcast, mailing list, and let's just say I'll put the third category as Meta because Meta owns both Facebook and Instagram. So I would say my third is Meta. And that's pretty much it. That's what I spent all my marketing time, any sort of ad dollars that I might spend. It's all in those 3 categories of my, building an email list that knows me, likes me, trusts me, building a podcast of people who knows me, likes me, trusts me, and showing up on Facebook and Instagram and building an audience for people who knows me, likes me, and trusts me. And actually, I don't want you to like me. I want you to love me. And I love you. That's something I started asking myself recently. When I get up in the morning and I start to create things in my business for you, I ask myself, how can I love my clients, love my audience, love the person I'm writing this for, speaking this to, like in this episode? How can I love you in this episode? How can I feel love for you and feel your struggles and feel your dreams and give you something you need on a soul level to help you alleviate your struggles and reach your dreams from a place of love? So I don't want you to like me. And if you and I are an ideal fit, I want there to be a love, the energy frequency of love, which is so much stronger than like. And that's what activated spiritual intelligence can help you create. And you don't have to calculate it all out. I don't calculate how I can serve you and be in these frequencies. It just flows. There is an ease. I follow my energy. I follow my alignment. I follow my higher self because with spiritual intelligence, you know where to place your energy. You know what to ignore, which is just as important. You begin making decisions with a level of clarity and confidence that strategy alone cannot provide. This is when business starts to feel more easeful, more focused, and far more aligned. My invitation for you this week is to take some deep belly breaths, connect to your higher self, and ask, what is one business skill or strategy that I'm actually being called to deepen right now? I already shared mine. It's Instagram Reels. And once I get done recording this podcast, I am going to record an Instagram Reel. So you might be surprised how clear the answers become when you stop trying to follow every piece of advice and instead you just follow the voice of your higher self. And if you'd like to explore how activating your spiritual gifts changes the way you lead your business, you can learn more about Soul Blueprint at AllisonScammell.com/Soul Blueprint, or you can find a link in the show notes. That's a wrap for this week. I'll be back in your earbuds next week with another episode exploring the spiritual gifts business revolution. And as always, until next time, may you be soul alive.